Welcome back. In this lesson, it's going to be up to you to add timestamps for our location messages. So over here in the browser, if I send my location, it is indeed going to work. The problem is that what we're going to get back is just the link. We want to make sure to include a timestamp here as well. Now I have a series of challenge comments outlining what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to go ahead and paste those right here below my templates. Right here, the goal is to add timestamps for those location messages. Step 1, you want to create a new function called generate location message in the messages file alongside of the one we created for our standard messages. Now, the new function should return an object in the following format. We're going to have URL with the actual URL instead of the text string, and we'll still have created at storing a timestamp. So it's similar to what we have for the standard message, though slightly different. We're going to have the URL passed in and added to the object instead. Next up, you want to use generated location. That should be generate location message when the server emits the location message event. So when the server is emitting that event, right now it's just sending back the URL. We want to make sure to pass the URL through our function so it ends up emitting an object. Then on the client, we want to update the template to show the time just before it shows that URL. And finally, we need to make sure that we adjust the event listener for on location message, ensuring that it passes in the correct data when compiling the template. It needs to provide the URL and the time, which now both exist on the object, and you're going to want to go ahead and format that time like we did with our other messages. Last up, test your work. If everything's working well, you should see a timestamp showing up just before the link, exactly like we're seeing up above. The principles here are identical to what we did in the last video, so feel free to use that code as a reference. Take some time to get this done, and when you're done, come back and click play. How'd that go? Hopefully, you were able to get that done without too much trouble. There was quite a few different files to touch. You had to edit all 4. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, over in messages, we'll end up creating a new function, const generate location message. This is going to take in the URL. And right here, we're going to set up an arrow function that returns the object. We'll have the URL property like we had up above with text, and then we'll set up created at new date, then get time. Perfect. So with this in place, we can go ahead and export the function down below, that is generate location message. And once it's exported, we're ready to move on to index.js and make sure this function is actually used. So before we use it right here, up top, we want to go ahead and load it in. So I'm going to load in generate location message, and down below, we'll actually use the function. So right here, this is the URL we want to provide. I'm going to cut it out of its current location. Then I'm going to call generate location message, and I'll go ahead and pass it right in. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we've created this function, and it technically could also calculate the static parts of the URL as well. That wasn't part of the challenge, but if you did go that route, that is perfectly fine as well. There are a lot of different ways we could structure this. The important thing at this point, though, is that when the server emits that location message, it is sending back an object. Now that means over in chat.js, we have to anticipate that object because currently we were looking for just a string, a URL. So right here, what I'm going to do is call the URL something different, like message. Then down below, as the value for the URL property, I will grab message.url like we were doing before. So we're still providing the same value. We're now just getting it off of the object. From here, we can also bring the date into the mix. So we are going to want to render that in the template, which means in index.html, we have to put it somewhere in our template, which is this one right here. And as mentioned, I just wanted you to put it right before the link. So I'll add the same sort of structure we had up above. That would be the date created at, followed by a hyphen, followed by the link. Now we can go ahead and make sure that created at gets provided when we render that template. So right here, created at, we are going to use moment to format message.created at, and I'll go ahead and use that same pattern. So right here, that is format, followed by h:/mm space a. Excellent. Now that we have this in place, we're ready to move on to step 5, which is to just test our work. So we're generating an object on the server, sending back the timestamp, and we're taking advantage of that timestamp on the client. The only other thing we have to alter is our console.log call right here. Right here, we are trying to log out URL, which no longer exists. I'll just continue to log out the message object so we can see exactly what we're getting back. Over in the browser, we just need to give things a refresh. We can see our timestamp showing up. I'm going to go ahead and share my location, and right here, I'm getting a timestamp along with that link. Down below, I can see the object I'm getting back. It has both of those properties, which is great. And if I click the link, it should open up a new tab, pulling up my location in Google Maps, and there we go. So now that we have this in place, we have a really good system for working with time in our chat application. Now, in this case, we're formatting it in this format. If you wanted to include other parts of the time, such as the month, day of the month, or the year, you're more than welcome to do that as well. This is just the setup that I'm going to use going forward. With this in place, we're ready to continue on to the next lesson. And what we're going to focus on is getting some styles in place for the chat application, taking it from looking like this to looking like something you'd actually want to use. I'm excited to get to that. So let's jump in to the next lesson.